Good morning, everybody. Death. Can we all agree that it's a touchy subject? We hear about death every day and how it's destructive and horrible, but could it ever be something seen as beneficial towards American society? Well, actually, it can be, and with the death penalty. There's currently 30 states with the death penalty and 20 without, leaving 31 of 50 states abolished or with no execution in 10 years. There are also 5 ways of execution: firing squad, electrocution, gas, hanging, or injection, and injection being the most common because it's seen as the most humane and quickest way to kill somebody. There are also around 41 capital offenses, basically the main ones being treason, espionage, murder, or attempted murder of a witness, juror, or court officer in certain cases, and large amounts of drug trafficking. To see why the death penalty is beneficial, we must first look at the history of the death penalty, how it deters crime, and we'll see how it's biblically supported. The history of the death penalty began when it was brought over from Europe, and this is from deathpenaltyinformation.org. The first recorded use of the death penalty was of Captain George Kendall, and it was for spying on the early colonies for Spain. In early colonies, you could be killed for stealing grapes, killing chickens, or trading with Indians. And there had always been opposition towards the death penalty, which began in the late 1700s with the abolitionist movement. And by the early 1800s, states began reducing what deserved death. Continuing until now, the states have continued to reduce and struggle over whether death penalty is moral and should be allowed to be performed in the state that it is happening in. Recently, support has fallen to almost all-time lows for the death penalty, and it peaked in around 1995 at 80% and has declined since rapidly. There's a 45-year low as of 2017, 55% support for the death penalty and 45% against, which was a 5% decrease from 2016 to 2017. There are also many notable uses of the death penalty, the first one being John Wayne Gacy, who died May 10, 1994 by lethal injection, and he committed sexual assault, torture, and murder, and he was also known as Pogo the Clown. The second notable example would be Ted Bundy, who died January 24, 1989 by electric chair, and he was a kidnapper, a rapist, a burglar, necrophile, and murderer. And the third and last example would be Albert Fish, who died January 16, 1936 by electric chair, and he was a serial killer, child rapist, and cannibal, and his life and story is very interesting. Now, do you want people like this to roam free and not pay for their crimes? The death penalty will protect you from the world's Pogo the Clowns. The death penalty also deters crime, and this is from deathpenaltycurriculum.org. Although studies will try to show that it is ineffective, it only says that because the death penalty is rarely used and the studies left out other factors that were involved. We can see violent crimes decrease around execution times, and society is a high interest to prevent death or murder, and we should try to fight fire with fire, hopefully potentially saving lives and making potential murderers think twice. Although results are inconclusive to see if murder rates are affected by the death penalty, in 1973 Isaac Ehrlich brought in a new analysis which showed for every inmate executed, 7 lives were spared from the deterrence, and similar results have been produced in follow-up studies. Ernest van den Haag, professor of jurisprudence at Fordham University, says even though statistical demonstrations are not conclusive and perhaps cannot be, capital punishment is likely to deter more than other punishments because people fear death more than anything else. Whether people fear is most likely to deter most. Hence, the threat of the death penalty may deter some murderers who otherwise might not have been deterred otherwise. We owe all of the protection we can give to law enforcement exposed to special risk. I think this statement perfectly encapsulates why the United States should be in use of the death penalty as a deterrence for crime. Lastly, the Bible provides support for the death penalty. Many verses support the death penalty, as in Romans 13:3-4, which says, Romans 13:3-4 says, "For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer." And that was Paul saying that. Another verse was in Genesis 9:6, where God says to Noah, "Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made mankind." And I think these two verses are good examples to why the death penalty is good for society. A story about the death penalty in use would be in 1 Kings 18:40, where Elijah kills the prophets of Baal on the mountain for sacrificing to a foreign god. The Bible ultimately teaches an eye for an eye in relation to punishment of death. In conclusion, we as a country need the death penalty to maintain a safer and orderly society. We examined the history, the deterrence it has on crime, and its biblical support. Can you all agree now that you'd rather support the death penalty and possibly save lives of your family and friends or even yourself? Thank you.